opportunity, Lord, to learn more about you, to grow closer to you. And I just pray, Lord, that you would forgive us, Lord, where we fail you, and help us, Lord, to use this day wisely. Help us to spend this time in this class, hearing your voice, Lord, and applying these things to our lives, our daily lives. And I just pray, Lord, that you would really open up our hearts and minds, that as we contemplate these different verses and different ideas that you've put in the Word, that you would help us to really understand what it is you want us to know. And I pray, Lord, that your Holy Spirit would just teach us, Lord, because you are our teacher. And so we ask this in your name. Amen.
We mentioned a couple of days ago that we're going to try and establish the third year of Jehoiakim. And we're saying that the third year of Jehoiakim is the year 606 BC. So we're just going to run through the chronology just to establish that date. I think we all realise that it's important to get these dates correct, because even though people aren't overly interested in them now, we will be held to account as time goes on, no doubt. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to list out the kings, list out the years, how long they reigned, and then we'll read the verses together and put some history together to try and make it a bit more relevant to what we're doing. So we're going to begin with King Ahaz. His son is Hezekiah. Manasseh, Ammon, Josiah, Jehoahaz, Jehoiakim, Jehoiakim, and Zedekiah. So they shouldn't be new to us. We know that these are the 7 last kings of Judah, and we understand that there's some relationship about the 7 thunders that we bring into Millerite history and into our own. Most people are familiar with that. So let me put how long these kings reigned for. "16 years, 29 years, 55 years, 2 years, 31, 3 months, 11 years, 3 months, and 11 years." I don't know if you've ever noticed that there's this alternating pattern for these 4 last kings. I'm not sure what that means, but it must have some relevance to it. So let's put the dates where these kings are going to begin to reign. This is the year 742. And if you just go 16 years, it takes you to 727. Everybody knows that we're going to be working down as you go forward in the years, because he's going from BC, from essentially a big number, it's going to go down to 0. We're running down to 0. Then when you go from BC to AD, the numbers start increasing. So it's pretty obvious, but some people just don't. They just miss that, and it confuses them. 698. 697, 643, 642, Let me. Okay, so they're the dates that we need to address, and the thing that we're looking for is trying to establish the third year of Jehoiakim.
Chin.
Sorry, yeah. And you see the numbers is really going to work out. So let's just go through those Bible verses and maybe give a bit of background. I'm sorry?
Where did you get all these dates from?
So it's fairly, you can do it a number of different ways. You can either accept 723 as a fixed date, and you can work backwards from that if we believe that 723 is a firm date, because from 723 you can start marking back. 723 is going to be in his reign somewhere around here, to Hezekiah's reign, and you can backtrack to go to Hezekiah to establish this date. But most chronologists, most historians, there's fairly good consensus that 742 is a date that most chronologists agree with. So I'm taking 742 as a starting point, that most people agree that Ahaz is going to come to the reign in that year. There's good evidence for that.
Isn't that date? That date, is one of the most sound biblical dates that have been established, because there's 3 kings or 4 kings that are all at one point. We're going to go through that.
Yeah. So
that's why it's so sound. That's why they stand on it.
And once you've got this date, you just have the years already given to us, and you can just go right down to here. Once you get to, we'll talk about this in a moment, Carchemish. Carchemish as well can be established fairly well to be 605 BC. And we'll talk about that in a second. So once you have Carchemish 605, you see that you'll be able to establish that this fits in with this chronology. And you've got 2 points here, 742 and Carchemish at least, which you've got good external sources to know that these dates are pretty sound. So let's read 2 Kings chapter. There are a number of verses that I want to pick up from this history. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 7 first. We'll go to Isaiah chapter 7. Isaiah chapter 7 is the primary chapter that we use to establish the 2520 in 723. So if we go around the class and read Isaiah chapter 7, we'll begin in verse 1. And we'll read to verse 15. No, not this. We'll read until it's ready to stop.
This is 723?
Chapter 7, beginning in verse 1. Isaiah 7.
For the date though?
Oh, this event here, chapter 7, is occurring in 742.
Okay, so
begin reading with.
Very good stuff.
Have a good start. Verse 1. And it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, that Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail against it. No comment?
And it was told the house of David, saying, Syria is confederate with Ephraim, and his heart was moved, and the heart of his people, as the trees of the wood are moved with the wind.
Then said the Lord unto Isaiah, Go forth now to meet Ahaz, thou and Shirashab thy son, at the end of the conduct of the upper pool in the highway of the foolish field.
And say unto him, Take heed, and be quiet. Fear not, neither be faint-hearted, for the two tails of these smoking firebrands, for the fierce anger of Rezin with Syria and of the son of Remaliah.
Because Syria, Ephraim, and the son of Remaliah have taken evil counsel against thee, saying,
Let us go up against Judah and vex it, and let us make a breach therein for us, and set a king in the midst of it, even the son of Tabeel.
Thus says the Lord God, it shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass.
For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is Rezin. And within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, that it be not a people.
And the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If ye will not believe, surely he shall not be established.
Moreover, the Lord spake again unto Ahaz, saying,
Ask thee for a sign of the Lord thy God. Ask it either in the depth or in the height above.
But Ahaz said, I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord.
And he said, Hear ye now, O house of David, it is a small thing for you to...
Is it?
Oh, thank you. Is it a small thing for you to weary men, but will ye weary my God also?
Okay, verse 14, so we'll go to verse 18.
Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive, and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel.
Butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. Back to you, Parminder.
Oh. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings.
The Lord shall bring upon thee, and upon thy people, and upon thy father's house, days that have not come from the days that Ephraim departed from Judah, even the king of Assyria.
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall hiss for the flight that is in the uttermost part of the river of Egypt, and for the bee that is in the land of Assyria.
Can we just turn to chapter 8 and read verses 1 to 4?
Moreover, the Lord said unto me, Take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen concerning Hashbaz.
And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record, Uriah the priest, and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah.
And I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, Call his name
Shalal Hashbaz.
How do you say it?
Mahir Shalal Hashbaz. Shalal.
For before the child shall have knowledge to cry, My father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away before the king of Assyria.
So we won't read this, but if you put in your notes 2 Kings chapter 16. 2 Kings chapter 16 verses 1 to 5. and 2 Chronicles chapter 28, 1 to 6.
Can you say those two again?
Yep. 2 Kings 16, 1 to 5, and 2 Chronicles 28, 1 to 6. And what they're going to give is, they're just going to give some historical interaction between these two kings. In the 2 Kings passages, it's going to tell us that in the 17th year of Pekah, Ahaz, when he was 20 years old, began to reign. So there's going to be a connection between Ahaz and Pekah. Pekah is the king in Israel. We just read in chapter 7 verse 1, it talks about Rezin the king of Syria and Pekah the son of Remaliah. Pekah the son of Remaliah is the king in Israel. So there's a confederacy between the Assyrians or Syria and the 10 tribes. This confederacy is now making war against Judah. And there's just some background history that's been spoken in those two chapters, 2 Kings 16 and 2 Chronicles 28. And it tells you about some war. So before this year 742, both Syria and Israel, the 10 tribes, have already made war with Judah and have decimated the land. And so when they're coming now, this is why we read in verse 2 that Judah is really scared. They're on their way to finish this work off. And if we read, we've already read it, I can't remember which verse it says it in, verse 6, what they want to do is, Ahaz is favourable towards the Babylonians, essentially the Syrians. So there's this interaction between who's going to side with who, and what they want to do, they want to depose Ahaz and put this person, where it says set a king in the midst of it, even the son of Tabeel. So they want to replace the king with someone who's going to be favourable to them, so that they can... there's geopolitical wranglings that are going on in this history. We're familiar, hopefully, with the 65-year prophecy that's brought to view here. Is anybody not familiar with what that 65-year prophecy does for us? So we don't need to cover it, or we do? We just quickly cover it. So we're in 742, and there's a 65-year time prophecy that's brought to view here. If you do the maths from 742 to 65, it takes you to the year 677. 677 is in the reign of Manasseh. In the Bible, you can't establish the date 677 because it doesn't tell you in what year Manasseh is taken captive by the Assyrians. It doesn't give you that information. The only way you can locate that date is from the 65-year prophecy, which is given in the year 742, which is back here. But it says that within 65 years that this prophecy is going to happen, that these two kings are going to be wiped away. And this within gives us this structure here, where we're in 742, and we can get 723, 677, and we get a 19-year and a 46-year petition, where we get this 65-year time prophecy. And the 723, we'll go through the verses now. The 723 you can establish through the Bible. It doesn't give a date, but it gives the reigns of the kings, and you know you're in 742. You know when this event happens. It doesn't mark it as being 19 years, but we know this event. And in this event in relationship to the reign of Ahaz locks in this date of 723. And then we know that this 46 years is typifying the time period from 1798 to 1844. We're all familiar with that.
Yeah.
And then you can get this as a mirror or a chiastic structure and go to 1863. A lot of people have problems with that because they think the time setting because otherwise his time no longer. But we
Past tense.
sorry?
It's past tense.
Yeah, we don't really have that problem. Just want to pick up some more little pieces of information in chapter 7. So we've spoken about these two kings, but in verse 3, then said the Lord unto Isaiah, go forth now to meet Ahaz, thou and, you get his name, Shabash. No, I'm not saying that right. Shear-Jashab. Shear-Jashab. So he takes his son with him, and he meets the king and has this discussion with him. So his name actually has some significance. Does anybody know?
The remnants.
Yeah? The remnant shall return.
Yeah.
So we're going to see that as Isaiah has two sons. The first son is brought to view here. It says, the remnant shall return. And that's what he's bringing forth to Ahaz. So part of the sign or the promise that's going to be spoken of in this chapter is to do with his son that he brings in. So he brings in his son, and his name means a remnant shall return. So that's one part that we want to understand. Then he talks about the destruction of these two kings. So there are these two kings, which is basically Damascus, Syria, Rezin, and Ephraim, Samaria, Pekah. This is Pekah, the son of Remaliah. Verse 10, after giving this promise that they're not going to accomplish what they want to, the Lord says to Ahaz, ask for a sign. Verse 11, ask thee a sign of the Lord, ask it either in depth or in the height above. But Ahaz, it says here, but Ahaz says, I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord. He puts it in this positive light. But how would we understand what's going on here between the Lord and Ahaz? The Lord says, I'm offering you a sign, and what's Ahaz saying?
I won't accept it.
I won't accept a sign. So there's a rejection of the sign that's going on right here. But he cloaks it in humility. So this is this false humility that's going on, and this rejection of the sign we can understand about at the end of the world, that the sign that we've been given is 9/11, and the leadership of our church have rejected this sign. The Lord's given them a sign, and they're saying, we don't want this sign, and it's all cloaked in false humility. So I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts, any comments on that to add to that, or
Did something like that happen in our time where there was a false humility?
at 9/11, yeah. Oh, the false humility?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, the rejection of the spirit of prophecy with Sister White.
But Sister White says they'll look to be conscientious, or the Pharisees look to be conscientious in their observance of their forms, and they were like, "Oh, we will not tempt the Lord," but in reality, they're just covetous and wicked in heart, and they're just rejecting it because they just reject it.
So I don't have a specific event at 9/11 that I can pinpoint and say, yeah, look, this is what happened at 9/11. Except if we want to take spiritual formation into this thread, because besides all the issue of spiritualism, that's a form of false humility, that we need to humble ourselves individually before the Lord, because we're not praying properly, we're not communicating with Him. It's just a form of worship that we're having.
Brother Parminder, we have several witnesses that have seen this, that the Protestants went to our leadership asking them if our prophet had written anything about New York in 9/11, and they said no. So that right there publicly they denied the fact that the Lord had given us a prophet that pointed out that things will happen at 9/11 the way they did.
Verse 12, but Ahaz said, I will not ask, neither will I tempt the Lord. And he said, hear now, O house of David, is it a small thing for you to weary men, but will you weary my God also? Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. So this sign that's been spoken of here is, we understand that it's primary level, this is Christ. born of the Virgin Mary. But there is an application both in the time period of Ahaz and also in the time period of the 144,000. Because what does Emmanuel mean? It means God with us. So we know that the sign that's being given here is when the Lord comes down to earth and is with us. So people have an issue that the virgins of 9/11 at one level can be represented, I think, by this person Emmanuel that's being brought to view, and he's going to be rejected. And he's brought through this virgin, which is this church. I think we can see parallels with that with Revelation chapter 12. This woman gives birth to this child, and the church has given birth to us.
Another witness to that is that if you look in Isaiah 66, I believe, and some of the other prophecies about Christ, his birth, specifically, most of them or all of them that I've seen are dealing with the 144,000 specifically at the end of the world. Yeah. When you see Christ being born, you see the 144,000 at the end of the world.
Yeah. Verse 15, butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings. Now, I think there may be two applications to this, but when I've read that the land that thou abhorrest, I've understood that to be Samaria. So the land that Ahaz is abhorring, he doesn't like, he's in war with, is the land of Samaria. And it says that land shall be forsaken of both her kings. So the king who's reigning at the moment is Pekah, son of Remaliah. And it says before this child shall come to the age of understanding, before he shall know the difference between good and evil, before he can become morally accountable, that Samaria is going to be forsaken and be destroyed. Verse 17, the Lord shall bring upon thee and upon thy people and upon thy father's house days that have not come from the day that Ephraim departed from Judah, even the king of Assyria. So now he's making this prediction. The king of Assyria hasn't come yet. So this king of Assyria is going to come in the year 723. In 723, the Assyrians come and they destroy this land that Ahaz hates. But what else is he going to do? It says, the Lord shall bring upon thee and thy people. So now he's going to bring upon Judah the Assyrians. And why is he going to do that? According to verse 12. Because he doesn't believe. He refuses to see that, accept the sign. And so the punishment that's going to come to Ephraim, the 10 tribes, is also going to come upon him. Verse 18, and it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall hiss for the fly that is in the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt, and for a bee that is in the land of Assyria. So verse 18 is going to take us past 723. 723, who's coming to war against Israel? It's just Assyria. But now verse 18 is bringing Egypt into this story. So now you see Egypt and Assyria both having an interaction with God's people. And this is now when the transfer happens from Israel being punished and destroyed to Judah being punished and destroyed. So this is where we begin to get these two threads of the 2520s, both the 10 tribes and the 2 tribes. And it's because he refuses to accept this sign. So verse 18 is talking about both these kingdoms, the Egyptians and the Assyrians. And the Egyptians and the Assyrians represent who? At the end of the world. I mean,
papacy in the world?
Papacy in the United States, I would...
Oh, the United
States. I think it would be the United States and the papacy. And they're going to come and make war against who? Against God's people.
What was your question?
Who does Egypt and the Assyrians at the end of the world represent? King of the North and, not the King of the South, but the United States.
I have a short question. Why do you say Egypt? I read the uttermost part of the rivers of Egypt. So
he's saying a fly and a bee.
talking on the about the rivers.
So it was the fly and the bee that I was referring to. Let me
The
read.
flies coming from Egypt, the bees coming from Assyria.
And those flies and bees represent their armies, basically, who are going to come and make war against.
Sorry, Parminder, maybe I missed it. Would you mind clarifying why we're saying Assyria is the United States?
No, Egypt is the United States.
Egypt, okay.
Syria is the king of the north.
Okay.
So this is the king of the papacy and the United States are going to come and make war against God's people, God's church at the end of the world.
Okay.
I know this discussion of it says the Lord shall hiss. So when this Lord hisses, there's been some discussion in class before that. And what's been the conclusion that the hissing represents, or is a symbol of?
I remember the discussion.
I thought it's taken to the Sunday law.
When he lists up the inside.
Yes.
There's another verse.
There's a number of verses for that, and the reason why I want to bring it up is.
There's 12 verses.
Yeah, I was going to ask Brother Coley for tomorrow to just bring to view what he can pick up on this phrase, the Lord shall hiss, because this is when the people hiss at when they see what's going to happen to Eli's house. So we know that has prophetic significance at the end, and I think it takes us to the Sunday law, but he can tell us tomorrow what conclusion he comes to. It's 12 verses, so that will be his sort of assignment for tomorrow morning. So Isaiah has come, he's brought his son, Shear Jeshab, and that means a remnant shall return. But then it says the sign that's going to be brought to view is a virgin that's going to give birth to a son. And chapter 8, I think he's dealing with this in its literal sense, in the present sense. Chapter 8, verse 1, moreover the Lord said unto me, take thee a great roll and write in it with a man's pen concerning Mahir Shalal Hashbaz. And I took unto me faithful witnesses and he records his name. Then he went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord unto me, call his name Mahir Shalal Hashbaz. Verse 4, for before the child shall know to cry, mother, my father and my mother, the riches of Damascus and the spoil of Samaria shall be taken away from before the king of Assyria. So what are these 4 verses saying? Sorry?
The child's going to represent them being taken away.
So the child's a sign, and it says before he grows up to have understanding what's going to happen.
Syria will be taken down.
Samaria is going to be taken down, and who else?
Damascus. Or no?
And Damascus, the Syrians. And who's going to do that work? Assyria. So the king of Assyria is going to do this work before this child grows up. So that's that literal application of what's going on, and it ties up with the verses in 17. It says, butter and honey shall he eat, that he may know to refuse evil and choose good. For before the child, this is verse 15 and 16, before the child shall know to refuse evil and to choose the good, the land that thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings. So the land's going to be forsaken, and verse 4 says Samaria and Damascus are going to be destroyed. But by the time you get to verse 4, Pekah the son of Remaliah has all been taken off the scene. And who replaces Pekah the son of Remaliah? Who's the king that takes over from him? No, Pekahiah is before him. After Pekah, it's Hoshea. So Hoshea is the person who kills Pekah, and this is the dynamic that's happening here. In 742, there's a confederacy between the 10 tribes and Damascus. They want to depose the king of Judah, because Judah has favourable tendencies towards the Assyrians and the Babylonians. There's been civil war raging for many years before this. They come to make a final last-ditch effort to depose Ahaz. Just before the siege happens, Isaiah comes and says, don't worry, nothing's going to happen and your household is going to be secure if you accept the sign that the Lord's going to give you. He rejects the sign, and so the punishment that's going to happen upon the 10 tribes is now going to happen upon him. So that's what chapter 7 is saying. But the sign is still going to be fulfilled, and this sign is given in the birth of Isaiah's second son, Maher Lal Hashbaz, which means, does anybody know what it means?
In making speed to the spoil, he hastened the prey or make speed.
Yeah, so it basically means to plunder, to make haste to the spoil, to plunder. So he's got these two sons, and they have different meanings. So the second son, which is a sign that before he reaches the age of accountability, Samaria is going to be destroyed and Damascus is going to be taken out of the scene, and Assyria does that work. Before 723, as the Assyrians are going to come and destroy Damascus, and then they're going to come to Samaria and the land's going to be destroyed or plundered. So this sign that's being given, which is the son of Isaiah, who represents both Christ and also God's people at the end of the world, the 144,000, is the sign that's being given, and the rejection of that sign is going to cause the king of the north to come and plunder God's people. But yet there's this other promise with his other son, Sheir Jesheb, which means a remnant shall return. So there's this remnant, and in the history of the kings, who is this remnant that's going to return? This is the thread of Judah and Nehemiah. This is the two tribes that are being brought to view here. The remnant. And that's typified by which king? Who's the first king of Judah that gets punished? Manasseh. And what happens to him? He gets taken captive and he returns. So he returns, and Ellen White says that he's an earnest or a type of what's about to happen. So when we see Judah, what do we see consistently throughout the history of Judah? Not just in that literal history, not just even in the time of Christ or Nehemiah. You see this punishment being brought to view or being brought upon Assyria, the king of the north. But what keeps on happening? You see consistently a remnant keeps on returning. Over and over again a remnant returns. You can see that in the Protestant history, you can see it in the Millerites, and you see it at the end of the world. There's this consistent thread all the way through when God is dealing with Judah, that the sign of Isaiah's son is that the remnant will always return. But there's his second son, which is the sign that the church rejects. They reject this sign, and in fact the sign that they're rejecting is that Emmanuel is going to be born. So there's this sign, and the rejection of that causes their utter destruction, that the Syrians are going to plunder them. King of the north will plunder God's people.
So you see a scattering and gathering over and over again.
Yes, so this is this scattering and gathering. And I think it's Prophets and Kings 420, I think it's 428. It says that these 10 tribes are scattered throughout history until the very end of the world, where they're brought to view as the 11th hour workers, or Edom, Moab and Ammon, that come back, and this is the joining of the two sticks. Oh, and the Nethinims, yes.
Do you know where she writes that?
I think it's Prophets and Kings 428. Someone might be able to, Sister Tony probably showed that. I think it's 428. People are looking and grimacing.
Is it under chapter 27 Ahaz, or?
I can't remember. It may be. Is everybody okay with that potted overview of Isaiah chapter 7? Amen. The most simple way to look at it is Isaiah chapter 7 begins in the year 742. There's a 65-year time prophecy that takes you to 677. You can show between how these two kings of Judah and Israel interact with one another, that you can determine the year 723. So that's how we determine the year 723, between the interaction of these two kings and the fulfillment of the prophecy that's given in Isaiah 7. But Isaiah 7 gives us a lot more information. It shows us that the punishment that's coming upon Israel is going to come upon Judah because they reject the sign. We see the two sons of Isaiah that are brought to view, which are typifying the northern tribes and the southern tribes, and how God is going to deal with them. We can make an end time application for all of that history as well. So that's Ahaz. Then between Pekah, Hoshea kills Pekah. After a number of years where he's wrestling to take the throne of the throne of Israel, he eventually becomes king. When Hoshea, who's the last king of Israel, who's going to be taken in 723, when he comes to the throne, Ahaz is already off the throne and Hezekiah is on the throne. So let me put Pekah here. He's the king that's ruling in Israel, and this is Hoshea, who's in the time period of Hezekiah.
I might have misunderstood what you said. Hoshea is reigning, and by Hoshea's third year, Hezekiah's first year comes.
Yes, yeah, I haven't read those, yeah.
Okay, I thought you said that at the time, the first year of Hoshea, Hezekiah's reigning.
I didn't mean, I mean in a generic sense. What I mean is,
okay, I see.
Between Pekah and Hoshea, there's a time period when there's no king in Israel. When he dies, he doesn't become king immediately. There's a gap because there's a struggle of who's going to become king. So he officially becomes king a number of years later. And so he's reigning when Hezekiah's reigning. And what we're going to see is that there are two passages that give an interaction between Hezekiah and Hoshea. So we're going to see in the X reign of him is going to give the reign of him. And there are two passages that deal with this, and it's going to help us to establish 723. So that's how we're going to establish 723 from two Bible verses that tell you that in the X year of him, something's going to happen to Hoshea. So that's what's going on in this history. We saw that who killed Pekah?
Hoshea. Or no.
It was Hoshea. I mean, who destroyed the land or the nation when Pekah's reigning? Maybe I didn't make that. Maybe I didn't make that clear enough. When all of this is happening, the Assyrians are building up their strength, and what happens is after the death of Pekah, there's no stability in the land of Israel. The land of Israel, Samaria. The Assyrians come on the scene and they make Hoshea a vassal, or they subjugate Hoshea, and now they're paying tribute to the Assyrians.
So the Assyrians killed him.
I think he's the one who actually killed him, but in that mix, the Assyrians are rising to the ascendancy, and they've now subjugated the 10 tribes or Samaria. So Hoshea is a vassal of the Assyrians. At the same time, the Egyptians are now rising to the ascendancy, and Hoshea begins to swap sides. So he wants to move away from the Assyrians and go on the side of the Egyptians, and this is why Assyria comes to punish Hoshea, and this is what's going to cause his death in 723. They want to come back and take their territory. So let's go to...
I'm missing something.
Okay.
742 is the first year of Ahaz.
742 is the first year of Ahaz.
From the first year of Ahaz to 723 is 19 years.
Yes.
Okay, so when we go forward, I'll express it. But I'm confused about the math because we're in the 6th year of Hezekiah, 723.
Okay, so let's go to...
I think you've done that wrong as well.
I've done what wrong?
No, I don't think he's wrong. I'm confused about it.
It's coming. Hezekiah is coming. 727 to 728. It must be going down then.
Oh, let me check that.
Ahaz
726.
reigned.
It's 726. Yeah. The print on my paper's a bit small. It's 726. I misread a 6 or 8.
I think that's what it was.
Okay, so let's go to verse let's go to 2 Kings chapter 17 verse 4.
Okay, that's what it was.
2 Kings chapter 17 verse 4.
Sorry, 2 Kings what?
17 verse 4.
Thank you.
Keep your hand in that, and let's just read 2 Kings 18 verse 9 first. I want to read 2 Kings 18 verse 9 first. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. So 2 Kings 18:9 says, the 4th year of Hezekiah is the 7th year of Hoshea. And it says that the Assyrians come against Samaria and besieged it. And the reason they're coming up here is because prior to this date, the Samaria was already subject to the Assyrians, but they've rebelled. And the dynamics of the rebellion is because of Egypt. Egypt is growing in strength, and they're moving, or they're shifting away from the Assyrians to the Egyptians. And now the Assyrians want to maintain their territory, so they come and besiege it. The 4th year of Hezekiah and the 7th year of Hoshea is the year 723. So we've just read 2 Kings 18. What verse was that?
9.
Verse 9. Which is the 4th year of Hezekiah and the 7th year of Hoshea.
So we mark the besieging of the city and not the full destruction of the city as the beginning of that 2520.
Yes, and this is the year 723 BC. And depending on how you read this history, Hoshea is taken captive right at the beginning of the besieging. So they lose their king in the year 723. That's why we mark 723 as that event there.
Where do you read that?
Yeah, where's
That they lose their king.
Yeah.
Let's read 2 Kings 17:4. (17 verse 4). So 2 Kings 17 is going to tell us the reason why they've come up. It's going to show the interaction with the Egyptians, and it's going to give us a little bit more history. Verse 4 and 5, yeah. So I don't know who's next to read. Brother Colin, you read verse 4.
And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to the king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison.
So we'll read verse 5.
Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years.
So verse 4 tells you that Hoshea is conspiring against the Assyrians, who are his masters, because of So, king of Egypt. He's moving over to the Egyptian side. King So is a new king that's come up. He's powerful, and Hoshea wants to break away from the Assyrians. And so it says he didn't bring in presents to the king of Assyria as he had done previously. So the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. So when the Assyrians come to besiege Samaria, Hoshea knows what's going to happen. So he goes out and tries to placate the Assyrians and tries to smooth the way. He says, okay, I'll come back on your side. But they're not having any of it. So they just capture him and put him into prison. So right at the beginning, they lose their king. And then verse 5 begins with what it says, Then the king of Assyria came up throughout the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years.
And it says that in verse 6 says in the 9th year of Hosea, which is the last year that he reigned, right? Because he only reigned 9 years.
Yes, so we're going to then go to the next verse, and so there's this other interaction, which is the 6th year of Hezekiah is going to line up with the 9th year of Hezekiah. And what these two verses are going to give you is this. Did I say that incorrectly?
You said Hezekiah.
Hezekiah and Hoshea. The 6th year of Hezekiah, the 9th year of Hoshea. It says that they. Did we read it? That it says that it was for 3 years. Yeah. 17 verse 5, and besieged it 3 years. These 3 years is inclusive reckoning. So from 723. 722 to 721, this is when Hoshea is taken, the king is imprisoned, and 723 is when
721.
Sorry, 721, the city is destroyed.
That's what people want to mark 721.
Yes.
Because this is a debate that they have.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
So this is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year. And we'll read verse 6, Brother Michael.
I think it's
Did we already read that? Did we already read? Yeah.
17, verse 6.
17 verse 6.
In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halal and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes.
And verse 10.
And they set them up images.
Oh, sorry, 18:10. 18:10. 2 Kings 18:10.
And at the end of 3 years, they took it. Even in the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is, the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken.
So, we're going to see this over and over again. This issue about 538 to 536, when we look at this at the time of the end, or the beginning of these, the 2520. However we want to look, let me say it this way. We know that the beginning typifies the end of anything. So when we take this 2520 and we go from 723 to 1798, 538, these are the two 1260s. We've already mentioned in class, and most of us know, that this time of the end, we're so inclined to keep it a fixed date, and we're not trying to undo that date, but what we're seeing is that there are a series of events that occur that cluster around any of these dates. And one of the things that we're seeing here is the same things happening right here. That we want to mark 723, and because this is typifying, this history is typifying this one, so we'd say this is whatever's happening here is going to typify what's ever happening here. So 1798, there are historical events that are occurring at the very end of the 2520, which are typified by this 3-year siege from 723 to 721. So when we begin to look at, and we haven't looked at it in any detail, the events that cluster around 1798, we should expect to see a number of events that are occurring. And I think we've spoken that, at least briefly in class, that we do see that. And I think this is what's going to begin to open up our understanding of 538 to 536. That what we need to understand is that at one level we're saying it's 536, and at one level we're saying it's 538, and it's not even that they're contradicting one another, it's that if we don't understand that history, I don't think we're going to be able to tie together what those events mean for us at the end of the world, because this progression of this progressive destruction that's occurring here, that's occurring here, and that's occurring in 538 BC, 538, not this 538, 536, 538 BC, Darius and Cyrus is going to have some impacts upon us at the end of the world. So that's what's been opened up as far as I can see with respect to where we're going to mark the time of the end.
But we've just read somewhere that during that time, Cyrus was actually besieging Babylon for 2 years. So wouldn't that kind of put it before 538, a couple of years before that?
Yeah, Cyrus did besiege Babylon for 2 years prior to 538.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's kind of not to the point necessarily what
Yeah.
you're saying.
But yeah, there must be some significance to that, but that wasn't exactly what I was referring to.
So just a quick overview, 723, Hoshea is taken, right?
723, Hoshea is taken, and he's probably killed there as well.
Okay, and then the city's destroyed, and then the people are taken captive?
Yeah.
Is that the pattern that...
So here the city's destroyed and the people are taken captive, but we know that when they're taken captive, it says that they're taken back to the land of Assyria, and they begin to intermingle with the people. And there are Assyrians who are brought into Samaria to subdue
I'm
the
just
land.
trying to say first the king, then the city, then the people. Did I get that
I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to put the city. I'm not sure what I'd mark as the event that's going on here. But during this, there's the sieging, and there's. Let me say it this way: the city's destroyed here, and then the people are taken away.
Yes.
And we have that as a fixed date. But during this time period here, from 723. Stroke 721. There are still people in the land of Samaria. There are still people there.
Correct.
And when Assyria comes back the second time to take Manasseh in 677, they're going to come back another time now to take Manasseh. They take the remnant of all the people that are left in the land of Samaria. So this destruction is progressively all the way through. It begins in 723, goes to 721, and then carries on. I just want to place it in this context here. We're at 723, and this is what year of Hezekiah, Sister Sarah? What's the year? What year is Hezekiah's reign?
The fourth year. The fourth.
The fourth year. What does he do before the fourth year? What does he do in his first year? Sister Alison, do you know what Hezekiah is going to do in his first year? Brother Jonathan.
I don't know, but maybe he invited the Babylonians to watch all his riches he has.
No, what he does is that's sometime afterwards.
Okay.
He invites the Samaritans, the 10 tribes, to the Passover.
Okay.
So this is 2 Chronicles 29 and 30. This is the great Passover. So just before they're going to be destroyed, what are they invited to? They're invited to this Passover to be saved. So just before destruction happens, they've got an opportunity to come back and join God's people and be saved.
Sorry, who was invited? The Assyrians or the northern tribes?
The northern tribes.
Where is the
This
text?
is 2 Chronicles chapter 29 and chapter 30.
So first, let me get this straight. Say that again. First, we have the Passover, the invitation to the Passover to both of the tribes.
So we know that after Ahaz is ruling, Hezekiah is going to come on. Is going to reign after him. When he comes to the throne in his first year, he's going to clean the temple from the first of the first month to the first day of the 16th month, 2 Chronicles 29, and then he's going to have a great Passover. And in this Passover that he's going to initiate, it's both for Judah, but he's going to invite all of Israel into this. He's going to invite the 10 tribes to this Passover.
That's before they're destroyed.
And so this Passover, just historically, without even looking at any prophetic significance, historically, God has given Israel an opportunity to escape the destruction that's just about to happen. But most of them...
I'm sorry, how do we know that it's the first year?
It says in
sorry, I assumed that we had... I'd incorrectly assumed that we were familiar with that. Let's just quickly go to 2 Chronicles 29.
3.
Why is there 2 firsts on the line?
Should be a fourth.
Sorry, that should be the 4th. That's why.
Okay.
Thank you, Dorothy. Verse 3? Brother, could you read verse 3?
Okay, got it. I found it.
Oh, have you got it? We're going to read it out.
Verse 3.
29 verse 3. Are you...
He in the first year of his reign, in the first month, opened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them.
And then it proceeds.
Yes, but then when you go to chapter 30, you see that it's the same year. So, where do we mark this Passover in our history? When we bring this into a present-day application, where would we mark this first year of...
We were marking it, that Passover actually happens at the Sunday law, but they're invited at the midnight cry.
Okay, so if we just put Sunday law, the Passover is going to be at Sunday law, the second Passover. So we know that this is the Sunday law, and in this time period, when the calls come in, if the calls come in for them to come out of the land of Samaria to Judah, if they accept that call and they come to the Passover at Sunday law, what's going to happen to them? They're going to be saved. So they're going to be saved before this event. But if they don't, they're going to be destroyed. They're going to be wiped out. And so where would we mark 723? Would it be there, or would it? I'm not sure if it would be. Would that be Sunday law?
It seems almost like it would be the Sunday law. It's an ultimatum. You have both of the Sunday law.
So I'm placing this at Sunday law.
But the first call for the Passover was only to Judah, then the second call was extended to the rest of the tribes.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Right. So we would put the first one at midnight cry, the second one at Sunday law.
I would have thought we put the first one at 9/11.
The first Passover is at 9/11.
The first call is at 9/11,
Yeah.
but the call where Samaria is invited is marking the midnight cry, because they're invited just before they.
I wasn't. The only issue I was just dealing with wasn't the intricacies of Second Chronicles. I just on a simple level, that historically, before they're going to be destroyed, they've got an opportunity to escape, and that opportunity to escape in our time is this call to the 11th hour workers and Nethinim to say, "Come out of Babylon." And we're going to begin to make that call at the midnight cry. And if the Passover itself is at Sunday also, if they've partaken of the Passover, then they're going to be in the land of Judah, secure and safe. But if they haven't, then they're going to begin to be destroyed right here. This is those who...
So what's the distinction then between the Sunday law and the close of probation? Because I also understood that Sunday law there was also a call going out, given until the close of probation. So,
And I think this is... I don't know how to address that question. Maybe it is close of probation then. Or maybe there's this progressive history. Sister Brittany.
Is this a different line of thought? Because I thought we were lining up. I know you're talking about Hezekiah, but I thought we were lining up Hoshea with the close of probation.
Different line of thought.
Okay.
Can I just read verse 6, chapter 30?
what?
Second Chronicles.
Yeah.
Might shed some light.
so what? Second Chronicles what?
Chapter 30, verse 6.
36.
No, verse 6.
Chapter 30, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the post went to the letters from the king and the princes throughout all Israel and Judah. So this is the writing that he's doing. And according to the commandment of the king, saying, "Ye children of Israel, turn again unto the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, and he will return the remnant of you," and that's at Jehoshaphat, it says, "that are escaped out of the land of the kings of Assyria." And so that escape is that escaping through slipperiness, Daniel 11:41. So for me, it is representing the Sunday law.
The reason why I marked it here is because Hoshea is the king of 10 tribes, marking that the United States is the king of 10 tribes, and he's going to get killed here. So that's why I was marking Sunday law. So both of these events are the Sunday law in that history. I thought we talk about 2 Chronicles 29 and 30 a lot, and I just wanted to give it its historical setting, which obviously has prophetic application, that it's before 723. it's their last opportunity to be saved, which is the last call for the 11th hour workers to be called to. Did you have a question?
Well, and maybe it's for observation.
Okay. We'd skip through the reign of Manasseh. We've mentioned Manasseh 677 here and how we connect it through the 65-year time prophecy. We've got 723, and we've connected 723 with 742 by the 4th year of Hezekiah. Because when you go to the 4th year of Hezekiah, we start in 742, you go down 16 years, and you go down 4 years, and you get to the year 723. So that's how we calculate 723 from this date here, using the 4th year of Hezekiah. And then we get 677 from the 65-year time prophecy of 742. So that's how we calculate those two dates. Is that... Whenever you get into any discussion of 2520, you need to have that ability to be able to do that. So we're going to skip through the reign of Manasseh and Ammon. We're going to skip the beginning of Josiah, and we want to talk a little bit about the death of Josiah. So we'll begin to do that, and I'm going to stop here for just a few minutes because I'm going to give Brother Jonathan the opportunity to share with us what he found out about how long. So we're in the reign of Josiah. Josiah's going to reign for 31 years. Josiah is a good king, but at the very end, what does he do?
He disobeys the Lord.
He disobeys the Lord. This is when the Egyptians are they're passing through his land, and the Egyptians are going to make war with the Babylonians. There's a war that's going on between various factions, and they're passing through the land, and Josiah is blocking his way. So let's just quickly put some history into this. There's a four-way fight that's going on. You've got Egypt with the Assyrians basically are fighting against the Babylonians. Does anybody know any of this history?
Yeah, I just read it.
Yeah?
Night.
Who's siding with the Babylonians? It's the Medes. And it doesn't say the Persians, because the Persians aren't really any sensitive, but we can put the Persians as well here. And this is the death of Josiah. We're not at Carchemish quite yet, but Carchemish is going to come into this history. The Babylonians are who? King of the North, and the Medes and Persians are the glorious land, the United States, and Egypt is the king of the south. So
and Syria?
Sorry?
And Assyria?
And the Syrians, at one level, the Babylonians are the Assyrians. They're essentially the same nation, but the Babylonians are going to take over Assyria. So that's why we don't normally include the Assyrians when we take this prophetic overview of the interaction at Carchemish, is because there's an internal struggle that's going on, a civil war in essence, you could say. So when we see this dynamic here, Brother Tabo, how would you explain that? So this is sort of Carchemish, preliminary, by Daniel 11 verse 40.
Well, I mean, I guess there's the aspect of the king of the south coming against the king of the north, and then I guess the king of the north subsequently coming back and retaliating. And I guess at a high level, that's what we see in Daniel 11 verse 40, where the king of the south, represented by atheistic France, inflicts a deadly wound in 1798, and subsequently the king of the north comes against him. as we read of chariots and horsemen and many ships in 1989, but this time against the king of the south, represented by Soviet atheism. And just you have the dynamic of the long drawn out war there, right? It's the same concept. There's a long drawn out war, with I guess the attack by the king of the south at the beginning, and the retaliation by the king of the north at the end.
So when we saw here in the 2520 that the beginning is going to typify the end, we're going to say this. We're going to see the same principle when we think of Carchemish, not with dates, but Carchemish is a symbol. So we're going to see Carchemish at the beginning and Carchemish at the end, and we're seeing this interaction. You've got the Medes and the Persians and the Babylonians are going to work together to come against the king of the south. So this is the king of the north with chariots and horsemen and ships are going to make war against this king of the south. So we see these three parties that have been brought to view at Carchemish. So we know that Carchemish has a prophetic narrative for us at the end of the world. So that's why it's important to understand.
So at a very simple level, what would you apply Assyrians for our time period before 1989?
I haven't worked that out, how the Babylonians are warring with the Assyrians.
Because the Battle of Carchemish is right there between that period, because the Babylonians have not been established quite yet as just being the king of the north over the Assyrians.
Yeah.
So that's before, and at that point you still have two powers, two king of the north.
Yes. Yes, there's this struggle that's going on.
And so from what I read from internet is that, not Joshua, not Josiah?
Josiah?
Josiah. He basically is interfering in this warfare because he's afraid that it's going to be a new power over them, because they were already submitted unto the Assyrians.
What Josiah wants to do is, Josiah, he switched sides now from the Assyrians
to the Babylonians.
Right. So as he's switching sides, that's why he begins to make war with the Egyptians, because he wants to help the Babylonians, because he sees what's about to happen. He sees that the Assyrians are going down, the Babylonians are coming on the scene, and they're going to be the new world superpower. So he wants to be on the right side of the Babylonians.
So I'm just going to throw this in there, but this is having to do with Peter. When Peter basically does not want to admit that Jesus has to die, and he's trying to stop that process. Was that what Josiah's trying to do?
No, Josiah is trying to. Actually, I shouldn't say no. Josiah is involved in the death of these. He wants them to die.
Right.
Because he wants to side with him. But I haven't understood what that prophetic significance is of the death of the Assyrians that are going to begin here. And end somewhere down the right road, but maybe we'll understand that. I'm running out of time. Brother Ty, you had your hand up.
No, I was checking.
Okay, so just to say where we're going to end up getting to, if this is Carchemish, and this is Carchemish, this is 605. So if you go into history, when it talks about the Battle of Carchemish, this is Carchemish.
The 4th year.
And this is Jehoiakim, Sister Tiffany. Who is this? Who's this king here in 605?
Jehoiakim.
Jehoiakim. This is Jehoiakim. But we've also got Carchemish back here, and let me just quickly find that date. This is 612. And who's the king here? This is Josiah. So we can see the death of Josiah and Jehoiakim being subjugated. It's not his death being subjugated, are parallel events.
I'm confused.
Why 612? It's only about 4 years or so to Jehoiakim from the death of Josiah.
Let me check.
Should be about 4 years.
We'll go through the numbers.
Must be the last year of Josiah, because
it has to be the last year of Josiah.
We'll go through the numbers.
So it should be 610.
It has to be 610.
Yeah. No, it's not 612. It's 609.
Yeah, 609, 610 in that range.
612 is another date that I just want to we want to talk about. So someone said they're confused.
That's alright, we'll do it.
Okay. The only reason I want to bring this up is Carchemish is brought to view in Scripture. We've read the passage about Carchemish. We'll read it again. This is to do with Jehoiakim going into captivity. This is related to 606 that we're talking about. So we need to understand what's happening at Carchemish. We need to understand that dynamic. But Carchemish is also brought to view back here at the death of Josiah. And when we mark the death of Josiah, Brother Gabriel, do you know where we mark, in our time, where do we mark the death of Josiah? Are you familiar with that train of thought? Okay. Anyone else?
9/11.
This is 9/11. Do we understand why it's 9/11?
When the leadership is being passed by.
Yeah. So this is 9/11. And two things happen to Josiah. Or there's two things that we pick up. It's the death of the leadership. What does he do? He gets killed by
archers.
He gets killed by archers, and archers are a symbol of Islam. Because when you go right back to Ishmael, he becomes an archer, a trained archer. And the other thing we pick up is about Josiah. He disguises himself. So he becomes a hypocrite. And after 9/11, there are no more hypocrites because it's only the history of the story of the virgins.
There's also two chariots involved.
Yes, there's lots of bits and pieces in there.
Okay, I know why I was confused, because the second battle of Carchemish is actually between Pharaoh Necho and Nebuchadnezzar, but it happened in the 4th year of Jehoiakim.
Yes, so that's what we're going to pick up. This is Jehoiakim, it's the 4th year, but we're going to relate it to the 3rd.
So this J is
Josiah and
but
Jehoiakim.
Josiah dies not in 610?
I'll work out the intricacies of why I've got 609 and 610. We'll work out the intricacies of that. I've run out of time to make a summary. I'll quickly do a summary. We're looking at 606. We've started to 742. This is a well-established date. When you run through all the numbers, these are the kings and their times. When you get to 742, Pekah is ruling in Israel. From 742, we can get 723 from the 4th year of Hezekiah, which is the 7th year of Hoshea. And because we know it's at 742, the date that actually comes up is 723. So you know that 723 is the beginning of the 3-year siege of Samaria, and we mark the death of Hoshea, his imprisonment and death, here in 723. We count 3 years and it gets to 721 where the city is destroyed. We've covered that. We've seen that the beginning of this 25, 27, 23 is, it covers this history here. There's a confluence of events. We can either call it a period and a point, but if we're seeing it here, we're going to see it here. And we're going to see more and more that when we talk about these fixed dates, that you see there's a cluster of events that are attached to it. We've seen the relationship between these two, and we're just moving now on to Josiah, seeing how his death has this interaction between this warfare that's going on between these three powers, the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, the kings and the Egyptians. We've seen the interaction between Daniel 11 here, and we're going to see that Carchemish is brought up twice. 605, the classic Carchemish, and also Josiah. And the reason we're going to see that is because if we can see that Carchemish and Carchemish are a symbol, we can get these symbols and bring them one on top of the other, and we can see that the death of Josiah here, which we can mark at 9/11 because he's killed by archers who represent Islam, and he disguises himself as being a hypocrite, and after 9/11 there are no hypocrites who are being tested, that we can see that his death has an interaction with 605, and 605, which is the 4th year of Jehoiakim, is intricately connected with 606. So what we've just done is, if you're not sure why we're doing it, is wherever we want to look at 606, we should factor in Josiah because it's just another layer of history. And the other thing we looked at was the second Passover here that Hezekiah had, and how this was the last call for the Nethinims, the 11th hour workers, the 10 tribes to come out of Samaria before they were going to be destroyed here, before their king was going to be killed. Brother Jonathan, I've only given you 2 minutes. If it's not enough, we can do it. You can finish off tomorrow because I don't need 5 minutes. But share what if we finish now, then that's fine. If not, we've still got 5 minutes. We might take 5 minutes tomorrow.
Okay, I was asked yesterday to give you an overview on the how longs in the Bible. First of all, I looked up in Strong's what kind of words are used in the Hebrew, and this is the word AD, I don't know how to pronounce it, and long is the word Mathai, I don't know, and both of them are going to be translated as how long, or a modern theologians would say when, could be also translated as when. But we use it as a how long.
For people who aren't familiar, why did we pick this up? Where's the primary text that we're looking at to address this issue?
Yeah, Daniel 8:13.
Okay.
So this is now the point. There are so many how longs in the Bible. Actually, I cannot give you an overview. I just picked the verses I'm familiar with, and the one we all know is Daniel 8:13. We know there's a question asked concerning how long the daily and the transgression of desolation persecute God's people. We know this takes place in 457, and this takes us to 1844. 1844 is a type of what?
Sunday law.
The Sunday law, yeah. Just do another line over here. So the next verse I found was Revelation 6. I hope you can read that. And it's talking on the 5th seal, and the people beneath the altar, they ask, how long, O God, till you punish the papacy for killing us. And Sister White says that what John saw in vision was not, maybe we can read that pretty fast. We quickly go to Manuscript Releases, volume 20. Wait a second. MR 197.5. Yep. MR 197.5. She says, and when he had opened the 5th seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain of the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, how long, O Lord? And so on. And then she says, here were scenes presented to John that were not in reality, but that which would be in a period of time in the future. So she said, so she connects the 5th seal with a period of time in the future, and on another passage, it's 20 MR 12.3. or 12.3, she says, no, it's 14, sorry, it's 14. She says, when the fifth seal was opened, John the Revelator in vision saw beneath the altar the company that were slain for the word of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. After this came the scene described in the 18th of Revelation, when those who are faithful and true are called out from Babylon. So then Revelation 18, 1-5 is quoted. So she says, she takes us again from how long, when the question how long is asked, to the Sunday law. And the Sunday law is type of 1844, or 1844 is a type of the Sunday law. So twice we see when the question how long is asked, it brings us to the period of the Sunday law. In Revelation 18, 1-5 is quoted. And actually, I'm not sure about this yet, but we know verse 1 is 9/11, and then the events leading up to the Sunday law. And then the other quote we just read before this one, she said it's a period of time. So, but I would suggest at the moment it's the Sunday law. Maybe I have just one more thing and then I'm done. We know the midnight cry has the same characteristics in a fractal line like the Sunday law, and we also know that in the line of Elijah, Mount Carmel is marked as the midnight cry, and we also can see that Elijah asked the people, how long do you want to
hold you between two opinions?
Huh?
How long hold you between two opinions?
Yeah. He asked the people, how long do you won't decide between me, the God, or the other gods. So we can also see that at the midnight cry there is marked how long. And of course in the fractal level the midnight cry is also the Sunday law. This would be three witnesses to show that at the Sunday law there's marked how long. And in general sense, what I found, a lot of verses, or nearly all of the verses, are dealing either with the heathen who mock God, and the righteous people. For example, David asks, say, how long, God, do you want to have this condition that people are mocking you? Or like in this time period we were dealing this class, people ask how long till you're gonna rebuild Jerusalem and rebuild your people. So this is, I guess there's a lot more to say. How long?
Just before we close, Brother Chris, could you just summarise why we're looking at this? Why are we addressing this issue?
Which issue?
The issue of how long.
I don't really remember. I know it was based off from yesterday.
Okay.
We looked at something and...
Brother Henry, do you know why we're looking? Because I want us to know why we're even looking at this, because it's not just, let's say, anyone, any volunteers?
Because of the vision.
It's because of the vision. This is Daniel chapter 8 verse 13, when it says, how long is the Hazon vision? Is that how long question taking us to 1798, or is it taking us to the Sunday law? 1844. That's why we're dealing. So my suggestion was that I think the how long is the Hazon vision takes us to 1844, and it's just another. It's another argument to say that the Hazon vision is up to 1844, which, in the context of chapter 13, chapter 8, must then be The 2300-day prophecy.
But there's another point that just pops up to my mind. We know in Daniel 12, Daniel asks how long. Daniel hears the question how long, and the answer is 3.5 times, and this brings us to 1798. I also found that.
But I really think it's interesting because the Lord demonstrates the end with the beginning, and the first time that how long is mentioned in the Bible is Exodus 10:3, and this is the question that the Lord asks, and it says, "Thus said the Lord God of the Hebrews, how long wilt thou refuse to humble thyself before me? Let my people go that they may serve me."
When were they let go?
Exactly.
Yeah, 1844.
Right.
Father in heaven, I thank you for another day, for studying your word, for having fellowship together. Thank you that we can be here in this nice place. Thank you for the study we had. So be with us on this upcoming day. Stay with us that we have a good time. And thank you for everything in the name of Jesus. Amen.